but I am not anyone's spiritual advisor. Okay. I'm just a mom and a wife trying to make it through the next day and studying and reading and just being curious. And in all honesty, I don't think that any one man can be this or woman can be the spiritual advisor of anybody. And the friends, biblical scholars, and people that are curious about the Bible. It's been a minute. I've been busy. Work has been a little chaotic, so uh that always takes precedence. And so I have not made a video in a minute, but I have something for you. And here's the thing. It's time for you to stop drinking milk and eat a real meal. We have to move on from the elementary things of the religion and learn the new things, the real things. Okay? There's this, okay. My cat's having everywhere and making messes and all that. You can see my kitchen right there. Okay, yeah. Anyway, so there's a big problem with our education system right now. Okay, I watched this. There's a lot of things, our kids are not being educated properly. The things that they teach them is got a healthy dose of political agenda built into it. And I watched this video from this young lady, which I will link for you below. She went to school to do she wanted to get a degree on literature, ancient literature, and all of that. And she had to get out because what was happening is they were literally being indoctrinated. Now, you hear that a lot. Oh, they're being indoctrinated, but then what does that really mean? Okay, here's the thing. In order to have a degree in the past of literature of any kind, you would have to have read your Jane Austens, your I don't know, Henry James. I didn't grow up in this country, so for me, literature would be Isabel Allende, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and a different kind of breed of a different kind of literature, more suited to where I come from. Nevertheless, you would have to read the book, you would have to understand maybe the historical background, analyze the cadence of the writer, what is he trying to say, what's the hidden meaning underneath it. It made you think. It made you try to understand other human being, and by doing that, you actually gain a better understanding of yourself. Okay, that is not what was happening in this particular university, and it was a major university. She'll tell you about it if you click on her video. Now, what they were doing was instead of having you read the book and then analyze the book and learn about the book, what they would do is give you a critique from someone that read the book who had a political agenda. I think there was a certain comment about Jane Austen promoting colonization, which, if you read any Jane Austen at all, that's not what that is. Anyway, so she stepped out of there because I stepped out of academia because there was nothing she was gaining from it. It was all propaganda, and she was severely disappointed. So she turns on to her YouTube channel and she seems to be sharing literature and all of that. There's that lady, and I do follow another lady called Lady of the Library, I think is she's called. She was working on her PhD in ancient literature, I think. Anyway, she talks about books and academia and how to read and all that. And I was watching a video from her this morning. I'm gonna link that channel, that video for you, because she gives advice in how to read hard books, that it's literally what I did to get through the Bible the very first few times, okay? He just gives you some very solid advice, and she has a British accent, which is even better. She sounds so smart in my brain. Anyways, that's not why we're here. Downsizing. It is time for you to become a scholar of the Bible. Okay? You can be a scholar of the Bible. How do you go about that? That sounds like you have to go to school, get a PhD, and all of that. But it's really, really important that you become a scholar of the Bible because the apologetics world is full of grifters and tactics and weird things that they try to they're not trying to teach you how to read and interpret the Bible. What they're trying to teach you is how to subdue people so that they don't question the status quo. And so that's one of my points today is yes, academia has lost a lot to the powers that be, liberal powers that be, that tell you, oh, don't think too much about this. We're going to give you our opinion, and that needs to be your opinion. No, you know what's happening also? And it's been happening for decades now in the Christian world. They don't want you to learn either. Okay? The evangelicals of this world, except for some of the few newer ones that I found that I think are very honest about the scholarship regarding the Bible, but the evangelical world, the people that you go to church with, they don't want you to know any of this stuff. And they purposely keep you dumb because dumb and ignorant makes you docile. Okay? Dumb and ignorant makes you docile. You give your money, you do whatever they tell you, and they keep you scared. Okay. Freedom, no, have you ever heard that? Knowledge is power, you guys. Knowledge is power. So, how do we become biblical scholars? Okay. I'm going to give you a couple things, a couple details, and some things that might just kind of make your head explode a little bit. I'm sweating. Just went for a walk. See that? And menopause, probably. Have you been through menopause? That sucks. Anyways, so the Bible has a historical background to it. The written records that we have are pretty old, but they're not as old as you think. Okay? We have written records, I think it's at least 500 BC of the biblical records that we have. That's one thing. Does that mean that the Bible is not true? No. It just means that that's what we have. Okay? Now, there are a lot older records of creation stories, of flood stories that seem to be kind of in the same vein as the flood story and the creation stories of the Bible. They are from the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Egyptians, and you have all this great history that happened around the same time that you had, the people of the Bible living. Okay, now what people will tell you, people that don't have an interest in making the okay, they have an interest in making the Bible just a secondary book. They'll tell you the Bible borrowed from all these things, and the Bible is a copy of this, what, this, and that. And you'll hear all these apologetic people talk about it, and they'll tell you no, and they'll give you Wes Huff is really good at it, okay? But the fact of the matter is, you have to understand the past in order to understand our future, and and understand what the Bible tells you. Now, what? That we have, so for instance, the Code of Hammurabi. It's in tablets, and it's 1700 years BC old. Okay, so it is what, 2000, almost 4000 years old. We have stone tablets that have in it written the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is just about as old. and we have the I think the Numalish also. It's in stone tablets, and there's all this stuff that is so old. It's at least 4,000 years old. Okay, and definitely the writings that we have of the Bible, the writings of the Bible are not that old. Okay. But what does that tell you? Does it tell you that the Bible is not old at all? No. What it tells you is that the people that wrote the original stories, the oral traditions that were passed down from generation to generation, that are written for our benefit in the Old Testament, are at least as old as everything else that we have found regarding the Babylonian kingdom, the Syrian kingdom, etc. Okay, so that's important to know. Uh, don't be afraid of going into the scholarship of the times of the things that tell you about how the Bible relates to its history. The Bible was not written by the hand of God, friends. He used human agents to act in history, who then wrote it down or passed it down as oral traditions from one person to the other until we get the ratings. But that's not the point that we're here. How do we become biblical scholars? You're gonna have to read books that are hard to read. That's really it. Now, there's two different kind of people that do the Bible studies. Okay? You have your 15-minute devotional person. Grabs a psalm in the morning, reads through it, does a little dang, and you're ready to go. And somehow that seems to be sufficient. I would I would disagree with that, because you can't learn to discern the voice of God with 15 minutes a day. Okay? Not if you're aiming to really discern God's voice. Okay? So that's one thing. Now, there's that one person, and people tell you all the time, they want to baby you and tell you, oh, yes, you should do that. That's good enough. Whatever you can do with good, all of that. Okay, here's a really helpful thing that you can do. I've done it before, and when I feel myself drifting, I do it again to make sure that where I am. You grab a notebook, and every hour you of a day, take 2 days of the week, it doesn't matter, and write down what you do. You're gonna see that a lot of your time is spent on tasks or things that are not necessary. Now, how many of us, you and I, because I've done it, sat in front of a TV and binge watch a whole season or whatever in a weekend? Okay, so if you tell me you do that and then you tell me I only got 15 minutes to study the Bible, we're not even in the same universe, friend. Okay? So no, you got the time. You got the time. You just are not prioritizing God there. Okay, so that's one thing. So what you're gonna do is you want to study the ancient Near East. That means, Babylonian, because why? Think about it. Our people from the Bible, our characters from the Bible, the people in the Bible were destroyed by the Assyrians, Israel, and they were. You see that? You see that little brat? There's nothing there. He's safe. But the Assyrians were destroyed Israel. God sent the people of Judah uh, to the Babylonians in an exile, and they came back after the Persians. Yeah, when the Persians came in. Okay, then when we find Jesus, they are under the yoke of the Roman Empire. Do you know anything about them? Okay. Are you even aware of these things? I wasn't when I started reading the Bible, and nobody shared that with me. When we went to church after church after church, and nobody would share that information with us. I had no idea. I didn't know where the history of the Bible happened, where it was located, and all of that. So this is really important. Okay. I have videos here that you can watch about where to read, podcast to start with, all these things. So, but if you're already in your journey of discovering the Bible, a true scholarship journey of the Bible, we're going to start with, okay, I have a series of lectures by this Harvard professor. They're like 12 years old, where she does a survey of the Old Testament. She's great. Okay. Is she gonna massage your spiritual bones, telling you about all this God and all that? No, she's just gonna give you facts. Okay, she's gonna give you facts about the historical background of the Bible, and you are going to have to be a free thinker, a thinker. Okay, so one of the books that she recommended is this one. Okay, The Ancient Near East by James B. Pritchard. Okay. It's an anthology of text and pictures. So this book has text for the Code of Hammurabi, okay, legal text from the time. It has myths and epics from the Ugaritic myths and epics. It has everything, a lot of things, writings, relating to the ancient Near East. Okay, I don't know if you can see it. All right. I don't know. You can't see it really, but it has It has things that we have from the time, from literally almost 4,000 years ago. Okay, this is the story of the part of this is the story of the Bible. Is this that it will give you context to what you're reading in the Bible. Okay. Another one that I've found. Okay, now let me walk you through something. So I started becoming interested in all the stuff, but one of the things about this sort of thing is not everybody talks about it, so it's hard to find scholars that have written on it that have uh, a certain pedigree behind them, and it's important because depending on how good and trustworthy the scholar is how good and trustworthy the information can be. So the one lady that I found regarding the Babylonians was Stephanie Daly. Okay, about her book, and it's regarding the the city of Babylon, and it's kind of a history of the Babylonian Empire, as it tells you here. See, where to go? 2000 BC, AD 116. Okay, and this one again has just details of the life of the Babylonians, reliefs of images and stuff. This is important. This is what the ancestors of the biblical people looked at, so interacted with. It's important. You need to know. And now, how do you find someone again? Okay, so that we live in the era of the internet. So all I had to do was who is the best writer of the Babylonian da da da. And then you kind of have to go through it. Usually people like this, they'll have, her name. I didn't know who she was before. They will have a bunch of books or uh what they call them, articles or essays on the subject. They'll belong to a particular university or a particular college. They are professors, they have a PhD. And this is one of those things where I think a PhD is important because this one lady, they speak, not speak, but they know how to read the language of the tablets, and they can translate it, and so they give you a translation. So that's important. This is when a PhD, I think, becomes valuable. And the other thing is she's not interpreting for you. Okay? You're gonna have to do some thinking of your own. She presents you with the data, and then you have to do a little bit of thinking. Now, there's another book I bought from her. It's Myths from Mesopotamia, Creation, the Flood, Gilgamesh, and others. Now, the flood, the narrative of the flood is told by more than one culture, not just the Jews in the Bible. So this is what you do some thinking. Is the Bible repeating a story that they heard from these people, the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the all these cultures, or are they all drawing from the same well of knowledge of of the history of the world, the universe, or just of the area. So, anyways, this one is also from the same lady, Stephanie Daly. Okay, and this one has the actual writings. Again, it's probably a little bit of a duplicate, but it's all. I'll tell you one thing here. Let me show you this. Okay, so it tells you what tablet it is and all that. Uh, Let me tell you something. I know that there could be some overlap on some of these books that I bought, but here's the thing. Scholarship is moving so fast right now. So fast. They are day to day, they're digging stuff out, tablets and things like that. They bring new light into other things that they already had. So for instance, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay, if you if you have a book that was this 30 years old that talks about the Epic of Gilgamesh and is translating it, you're missing out because they have found more tablets that fill in the gaps that we had for that epic before. So these things move fast. Okay, the other area that I'm studying right now is Greek literature. Now, this new translation was recommended. I watched this YouTube channel and the guy showed us what he did. He put a bunch of translations of the same passage in the Iliad, or was it the Odyssey? And he said, well, which one resonates with you? Which one is easier for you to read? You don't go to the hard things to read sometimes. Go to the easy stuff and then you learn from there. So this is actually a pretty recent translation of the Iliad. Okay. And I have another translation of it, but I don't like the language of it. It's making it hard for me to follow, but I do have an audiobook on the Iliad and the Odyssey, and that was a little easier to follow. But then I saw this one, I'm like, okay, I like that one. I think I can follow it. Here's the thing. If you read this book, the Iliad, and then or read the Bible, and then you read some of the epics of the Mesopotamian, Babylonians and stuff, you're going to find a lot of things that match each other. Like in the Iliad, they talk about sacrifices, they talk about creation, they talk about a lot of things that are very, and like I said, this is all oral tradition, and it's really interesting to find so many parallels between the Greek mythology, the Greek literature, and the Bible. Because technically speaking, the people of the Jews did not meet the Greeks until almost close to what is it, 100 years before Jesus. But this stuff is older than that. This is almost 4,000 years old, 3,000 years old. Okay? So, how do you become a scholar? You read. Just follow be curious, follow your curiosity, read things, listen to lectures. If the person that recommends a book, read the book that they recommend. One of the places I started was trying to understand Jesus's Jewish context. I started reading a book by Lois de Berger, and I will link uh, her website down here. Now, she puts it in really simple complex context, really easy to read for day to day, non-scholars kind of things. But all these people have but bibliographies. And so do yourself a favor when you find a comment that you think in whatever book you're reading that draws your curiosity, look at the bibliography where she found that comment, follow that trend, and we'll see where it takes you. But it's time for you to stop the brain rot, friend. And 15 minutes a day ain't gonna do it, right? Uh, God is speaking through the Bible, but if you are you listening? And if you are not paying any attention to the context, the historical context in which God uh God put his hand in where he interceded in history, you're not gonna get it. And that's it. So all that to say is uh so I see a lot of channels. They have they give you a lecture, a sermon, or they interpret scripture for you and all of that. But I am not anyone's spiritual advisor. Okay? I'm just a mom and a wife trying to make it through the next day and studying and reading and just being curious. And in all honesty, I don't think that any one man can be this or woman can be the spiritual advisor of anybody. What we need is people to give you the tools so that you can study and you can have Jesus be your personal spiritual advisor, not just some dude that has as much sin as you do.
Yeah, I'll tell you how we did. Because I did, when I studied the Bible, it was a long time ago. And it was funny because when my wife started going through the journey, I am a firm believer that this is a journey that you need to do by yourself. All right. And it was watching her develop was really cool because when it got to the point, I'm like, we're not exactly the same. We do believe a little bit varied, I would say, but the main points we pretty much agree on. And watching her come around to it was really great. But spirituality is a journey you have to do by yourself. If you're doing it because you think it's expected of you, right? You know, and it's like if you're a Christian because you're wanting a reward, yeah, are you really a Christian though?
It's a
Right?
problem.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's got anything to do with what she was saying. But yeah, this is a journey that you need to make your mind up and you need to do it by yourself. Don't let anybody, I mean, you can ask opinions and things like that. That's fine, but don't let anybody tell you what the book says. You have to read the book enough that you understand what it says on your own. Anyway,
True that.
just my
Anyway,
opinion.
yep. And on that note, read some hard books. I'll leave the links for you so you can, uh, hopefully be curious about it. And listen, the scholarship of the Bible is changing every day. And what they tell you in the churches is not. You don't need to be babysat. You're a grown up. Okay. You don't need to be told right from wrong. You know already. You know already. You know you're not supposed to do certain things. I don't need to tell you about it. I am not your spiritual advisor. Jesus is, God is, and He already put that message. He put the law in your heart. So you know better. All right. God bless. Bye bye.